So then when you think about future of work, what do you think?
Yeah, I think before answering that, I would like to take a moment to talk about the past of work, how it evolved and where it came from. So if you take a step back and go back thousands of years, it was all sustenance farming. Families would live together and they'll farm for their own food. Then someone came in, someone strong, and there were hunters, and they came in and said that we will provide you the security of food, and in return, you can provide us your service. So in return of security of food, that job was given. And that is what was the exchange. Then, of course, that once that strong person died, the security went away. And then people realized that it should not be one person. Maybe ideally it should be multiple people. So the bureaucracy and the bureaucratic organization came along, where there was the top person, then the second most, the third in command, and so on. So I think from there, it was more sustainable, right? Because if the top person dies or anything happens, they still have a chain of command where it will become more sustainable. But the exchange was still that we will provide you the security of food and then later shelter in return of your services. And now, thousands of years later, it's unfortunate to see that it's still the same, where people are asked to work 8 to 10 hours a day in return for some money, right, which will provide them food, shelter, maybe education to their kids. But I feel the way it has evolved, now people deserve more. And I feel we are at a point where we can create an environment where people get more. So it's not anymore about work life. It's about wholeness. You don't have to work for money by killing yourself. Maybe instead you have to work towards what you love while getting the money, right? And I feel in the past 2 decades, these tech companies who came in have worked a little towards it, where they brought in empowerment, more flat hierarchies, right? So people feel more fulfilled. But I feel this is just the tip of the iceberg. It's just the beginning, and we can take it much farther.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And when I look back, right, at my journey, when I graduated and I worked in corporate America for a good 10, 11 years. And I remember I used to hate wearing a tie and a suit, going to work, thinking about what I'm going to do. I'm not passionate like everybody I was going to work with. I had sometimes good people, sometimes not so good people. But I remember that feeling, and initially that was my first experience. I would see people around me always worrying about their job. There was such a thing that was always an overhang for everybody. People would talk about Monday morning, you'd see a different mood. On Friday, it would be a different mood. And I always used to ask myself, why does it need to be like that? Why do people have to be scared of their jobs? Why is it something that they detest, even if they don't say it? You can see it in their eyes, like Monday morning, they don't want to go to work, and they have on Sunday night, they start thinking. So all those things, I didn't understand, and it did not make sense to me at all. But still, it goes on. Everybody wants a job because, of course, financially, everybody needs a job. But most people, I don't believe, are happy doing whatever their job is. Every day I would think, I'm doing this, but when I start my own venture, it's got to be different, because everybody should have fun. At the very least, you should be excited to do something. People shouldn't be working 5 days to live their life for 2 days. It did not make any sense to me. And life is just too short. You got to be doing what you're passionate about. A lot of things that I did not like or hated, I should say, about my life when I was working as a professional in New York in finance, we do opposite of some of those things, which sometimes doesn't make sense to many people on the outside, but I think it makes sense to us. We keep doing it. So I relate to what you're saying, how it's evolved, but it still has a long, long way to go. When you first came to SnackMagic, right, or Stadium at that time, what was your impression of the culture, what it was then? What was your first take?
So I think it was my first formal job. And I grew up seeing my father hating his job all his life. And Of course, we were there, his kids, his wife, and he had some financial obligations. And I saw him hating his job all his life. I came from Pakistan, first of all, and then when I started working, my first day I realized that it is different. And what I loved is that there was a conscious choice of making it different. It wasn't something naturally coming from the top down of what maybe your personality was or something. There was a conscious effort to make sure that people are enjoying and their life is more fulfilling through this job. And the way I realized it is, my initial reaction was when we started working, I was like, what is my role? And then the answer would always be very vague. And at that time, I thought that, like, if it's more well-defined, if you tell me that this is the role you want a person for, and then I fit myself in, it would give me more stability in terms of what you need from me. But later down the road, I realized that vagueness helped a lot because I was able to find myself. I was able to work on things that I was strong in. You started with the person you thought would make sense for the company, with the whatever you saw, with the right culture, the right attitude and everything. And then you created a job description around my specific personality. And I loved that part. And it's funny because I was watching Friends Reunion and they were mentioning that one of the reasons people can relate so much with the characters of Friends is because they didn't start with a character on the book and then went out and hired people for it. They literally started with people and then created a character behind it. So when you see those characters, it looks so real. Those people are those people. And I think one of the biggest successes of Friends is that.
Yeah, no, I didn't know that. That's amazing. And yeah, you can see that. Like, I was watching a show recently of Matt LeBlanc, who's Joey in Friends, and you see a lot of that same character in his other show also. So that is so fascinating. Yeah, I think so. I can relate to that. We might have a starting point, right? Like when we hire someone, we have, okay, fine, this is the areas you're going to own or focus on. And then we work together for 3 months. And in those 3 months, we realize what someone's strengths are and how they think. And then I think it helps us create the next role, and which can keep changing also.
Yeah.
So that's been actually one of our strengths. And if you look at the team right now, like many people started somewhere and ended up somewhere else. Yes. And it still keeps changing, yes. Which I think is fantastic. It's cool.
Yes. And it's funny you mentioned that because I saw a TED Talk on this exact topic, the future of work culture, not just work, but like the culture. And they were talking that before, as I mentioned, they were very bureaucratic organizations. It was flat up hierarchy. So the progress in that organization meant you are being promoted to a manager. So you start at the bottommost layer where you are working. Then once you work well, you become a manager, then manager of manager, and then you go into strategy. But they were saying like not every person who's good at their job want to become a manager or want to manage other people. So again, it's not inclusive enough where we are respecting different personalities. So the future of work culture would be, instead of going up like this, it went up like this, and then it was just like zigzag, because someone who's good might just want rotation, right? A personality like me, like I don't want that, okay, I start with operations, then I become a manager of operations, then I manage 10 hubs. Instead, what I would personally want is I start in operations, then I want to learn sales, then I want to learn something else. And that's my specific journey. The company is also for profit, right? But there's a way where we both can merge our goals together of what I want, what the company wants, and then work towards it. It doesn't have to be me or the employee killing their dreams or the company not making profit. There is a very well-balanced approach where we can achieve both.
Yeah. And when you look at why other companies are doing it, right? They have managers and that hierarchy, whatever. I feel one reason people or companies do that is because they want to hold people accountable, right? And they also want to monitor that they're doing their job, right? But if you think about it the other way, what if you have people who you don't have to manage, who you don't have to monitor, if they are motivated enough and they're doing their job, you don't need like that hierarchy, right? Definitely. And that's one reason why we, like for the longest time, we haven't bothered creating an org chart.
Yes.
Right? Where, yeah, and you empower people, I think they show their very, very best.
And also if people like what they're doing.
Yeah.
So in high school, I had a friend, and you can see I'm slim. So of course I didn't like going to the gym or work out. But I had another friend who was just like very athletic, would love working out. And me and him, we were best friends. We would go to the gym together. I would come out exhausted and he would come out feeling more refreshed. So it makes such a big difference, because when people are doing what they love, they don't feel tired or fatigued after working towards it. They're actually excited about like what I'm doing right now. I love it so much, like I'll think about it at night without anyone monitoring me. And I think that level of output for the company is like, for me, I'm more feeling more fulfilled, but even for the company, that level of output would not be possible if someone else is telling me what to do.
Yeah. And I got the same question from someone earlier today where they said, you're working so much. Like today, this morning, I got up at 3 a.m. Like how sustainable is that? I said, I don't know the answer to how sustainable it is, but I'm thoroughly enjoying myself, which is why I'm doing it. The day I don't enjoy what I'm doing, I'm not going to do as much of. We'll get someone else to do whatever the job is. But yeah, I do it because I enjoy it, not because there's so much work to do or that I have to do it and nobody else will do it. It's not that at all. But yeah, and that you guys see that reflected in other people also. Like I've had messages from people, I've had calls with people at 1 a.m., 2 a.m. and in the same time zone. Or it's day here, but it's like 3 a.m. in India. And not because I've asked them to have a meeting with me at that time, but because they had an idea and they wanted to bring it up and discuss it. And that you can't get out of people if they don't feel empowered, if they don't feel like this is theirs as much as it is ours, right?
Definitely. And I think apart from empowering them and they working on what they like, it's also how they're being treated, like overall, right? So again, going back like in a bureaucratic environment where you mentioned that people want to monitor output. Maybe there's like some pressure from the board or like they want to see the output. And when you try to do it, you are killing the individualism that every individual is different. And you will create some metrics where some people will perform better, but some other people might not, right? And I feel like in this organization, and although we are growing, but we are like very carefully preserving that individualism where we say that every individual is different. Some people might need more hand-holding, some people don't. Some people want to come up with ideas, some people want to be told what they want to do initially, right? Some people like doing execution, some people like doing management. And whatever anyone wants, them feeling they can do it as well, I think that is a huge, huge reason why people, even though if they don't start with what they love, they're able to find it within this journey. Yeah. And I feel like so many, like I am an example, like I started in operations, but now I'm doing strategy and vision. And I feel the culture that allowed me, right? It was because I did operations and I realized maybe I did one call over strategy with you and I was like, oh, I'm fascinated with it. And then the openness that I could have transitioned and explored so many different areas, I think that is also one very, very big thing where we can't expect everyone coming in to know what they love and to, because that's also a journey, right? So having this culture where people can find it is also like, I think one thing that we are doing and it's like very precious.
Yes, and I think, if you think about why people like org charts, because it's easy to visualize. They like to bucket people, silo people. People look at these metrics that you're talking about to measure performance. They're trying to deduce one whole individual's worth on one number. Yes. Or resume for that matter, right? If you think about, like everybody starts their recruiting with a resume, but I feel like someone's life and what makes them tick and some of the crazy things they've done in life, you can't put that on one resume. Yes. Right? So people do it because it's simple to explain to someone what the process is and it scales. But the minute you start doing all those things, you lose some of the individuality of each person. Right? Ultimately, it's human beings we are working with and hiring. it's not people who are going to be a cog in a wheel, so I think that part's super important. But I think, yeah, it's that balance, right? People want to simplify things, put it on paper, like have clean graphs, so they can explain it and put it on a PowerPoint presentation. But that, I think, defeats the whole purpose of people are different, human beings are different, everybody's good at something, everybody's not good at other things.
Yes.
But yeah.
And I think the amount, even from the company standpoint, the amount of growth that this culture can bring would be enormous, because you are literally getting so much out of every individual who are giving it out of love.
Yeah.
And they want to add more value and add more.
And take an extension to that concept, right? Like US side, but also now we are going all over, right? We have people everywhere. And like we ourselves have learned so much from people working in all different countries about that country, about the culture, about their upbringing. And that adds a whole new like plane to this whole thing that we're talking about, right?
Yes.
Which is so interesting.
Yes. And I think this also developed on top of the mindset that we had of culture, that individualism. Because I know some other companies where these bigger companies, they're still stuck to resume is like one thing, but they're even stuck to like which universities they hire from. Yeah. And then if someone dreams to get into that one company, you are telling them from their school that don't work on what you like. Get good grades in your high school so you can get to good college, and then from your good college we'll hire you. And then it just defeats the entire purpose of who that individual would have been than what they are right now.
That's so true. Yeah, again, it comes to GPA, one number, right? And then school, another thing. The people just want like, this is right. So I think, yeah, people want to force patterns, right? To make their life easy so they can explain it to other people. But I think the messiness is what is beautiful, I feel, like when you don't have rules, when you don't have boundaries, when you let people be, I think it's amazing how people show you a different side and you help show them a different side also, right? They themselves, like you're saying, like find out, well, once they are here, that they can do other things also.
Definitely. And I think this is my personal opinion, but I feel people are afraid of things they can't control or understand. And that is one reason why they want to bucket it into things they understand. But what we call in our company as like the organized chaos, if people are accepting that, okay, there is some chaos, we don't know certain things, and it is okay, and we will learn it during our journey, I feel that adds a lot of value as well, where people are not automatically bucketed. Like usually the first instinct, if you make someone a manager, and then their responsibility is to manage someone else, and they will be held accountable or how well they performed, they would naturally want to create some metrics around and try to bucket their work to show it to people on the top, right? But as soon as you remove that pressure and you accept that, okay, that manager is individual, that person is individual, and there's some element of trust, and we know they're working the best they can, I think it adds so much value towards what they can do.
So true. And I mean, there's so many other things that I think about, how the future should be. It should be open, it should be transparent. More people should know more things so they can make better decisions with their role. So that also, like in our culture, like we share pretty much everything, the good and the bad, with everybody, whether it's their first day or they've been with the company for years. So I think that also, I think it's screwed up in traditional companies where they're so protective about everything, which basically you're trying to make someone play tennis with just one hand. It doesn't make any sense. Whereas here, I would want to share as much as I can with everybody, so that's going to help them make better decisions. So that's also one thing that I did not understand back then, and one thing we do differently here.
Yes, and I think when you talk about culture in these big organizations and outside of the organization in where we live, like as a country and like nation, there is a certain culture, right? It comes down to how even your weddings happen, right? There's a certain culture of like everything. And I feel having a culture is good, but having a controlling culture is bad. So if you think of culture and you say, okay, like I want to have a culture where people are treated equally, right? That is very good. But if you have a culture where everyone needs to have a certain personality, right? They should be very disciplined, this, that, then you're like taking out so many other people who are more on the other side, like creative side and everything. So I feel like the culture is meant for the people and for just to give them a direction and not to control them. But in these bigger organizations, number one, the issue is they start writing the culture from optimization standpoint, and then they boil it down to such a minute detail, like that even that person has to wear a tie. You cannot bucket people who are, if you believe in individualism, you won't be able to do it. But again, it doesn't mean you shouldn't have culture. You should have culture, but at a very high level, and it should be vague. Again, it's good that it's vague, it's at a very top level, and then it's okay to have subcultures within that bigger culture. So if we say it should be equality, it should be everyone should like respect each other, that's good. That is high level definition. But telling people what they should wear, or like even in today's world, what time they should come in and go out, all these things are, I feel, overdoing the culture. And I feel people are realizing that, not from the work perspective, but like overall culture, that culture should give us that direction, but it shouldn't suffocate us.
Yeah. Yeah, and then you see companies trying to make up for some of those things, right, by providing this free that and that free that. But I think when the fundamental isn't there, no number of free lunches is going to change anything, yes. Right? So I think that sometimes I find ironic where everything else is wrong, but they try to make it up by providing free lunch. This is what works for us. Other things will work for other people, right? There's no right or wrong, but at the same time, I think it's the more you constrain someone, the less you're going to bring out in that person.
Definitely. Yes. Yeah. There's this proverb in Pakistan where they say that a flowing river from the mountain, you cannot stop it, because if you try to stop it, it will go out from somewhere else. But you can give it direction. If you don't give it direction, then it will go to places. So you can't stop it. You can't like very much like control it. The only thing you can do is give it direction. So like neither extremes, right? Neither trying to stop it or leaving it as it is, but like giving it direction would be the best way it will flow. You have been asking a lot of questions. I'll ask one as well. Where we are right now with SnackMagic, with the culture of the organizations overall, what do you think the future of work is and the work culture is?
I think in my mind it's very simple. It's letting people be themselves. And I think that's all there is to it. They have to respect each other. They have to be hungry to learn from each other and anything. They should be able to admit when they're wrong. And I think as long as those fundamentals are there, I think everything else falls into place. You know, we don't have to worry about what time someone's working, how many hours someone is working, when is someone working. You know, I think all that doesn't matter, to be completely honest. I think what matters is some of those other things. So I think the future is like that. You know, you have to empower people, let them be themselves. As long as the job is getting done, they are progressing in their career and also just as a person. I think we're on the right track. And we'll have ups and downs for sure, right? There'll be some things that don't work as we grow our employee count from 100 to 200 to whatever it is. But we'll know when that happens and we'll fix those issues. I don't think that people ask me what happens when you scale, like all this is not scalable. That is the most common question I get. And maybe it's not, we'll find out. But my approach to that is we don't have to proactively institute anything. We'll see some of the things that are broken and we'll fix those particular things. That doesn't mean everything else cannot stay as is for as long as we exist, which hopefully is forever. Right? So I think, that's how I look at it. I don't spend too much time thinking about what else do we need to do so it scales well. I think it has scaled well from 2 employees to 10 to 100. And we'll see where it goes.
That makes sense. But how do you, so I understand like scaling you're not that much worried about, but for any individual person who's managing someone, how do you measure, and I know we said we should not be measuring, but how do you measure that people are progressing? Like, don't you think if that person is doing their job or not? How well are they doing? and if it's worth the company's effort to put in them and the amount of energy we are putting in developing them. How do you gauge it on an individual basis if there are no bigger metrics?
I think a lot is qualitative, right? So as a team lead, you should be very close to your team. Nothing should come as a surprise. That's, I think, one thing we owe everybody, right? Like, you should know your team so well that nothing surprises you. Even if someone's leaving or interviewing, it's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with interviewing when you have a job. The only thing is, as team leads, we should have that connection with each person where nothing should surprise us. So that's one thing, and then you take it a step further. You as a team lead, you should see progress in them in terms of their confidence, in how they are thinking, those sorts of things. Some of the decisions they might not have wanted to make before, they should be comfortable making some of those decisions. And I think you'll see some of those things, and if they're becoming more confident, that probably means they're doing something right. Like, how much initiative are they taking, right? So I think those are some of the fundamentals that point to progress, in my view.
Got it.
It's not so much, you do this much, there's this much output, that sort of thing. But then again, everybody is different. Some people want more discipline. Like, they work better when, I know how to make 15 calls a day. So if that's their style and that's what makes them more productive and that's how they like it, we can definitely help set some of those objectives. But we would rather they set the objectives and tell us, and then we help refine those objectives, right?
Makes sense. How do you make sure that as we are growing, so when it was 5 people, you were managing those 5 people and you knew how to manage, right? Or you had this concept of like, it's individualism, this and that. But now we have grown to like a big company and there are many more layers of managers or team leads. How do you make sure that they get the same, or how do you hire or train them where they are passing along this culture and they're like preserving this culture?
I think it happens organically. It's continuously helping, right? I'm not thinking about consciously, but like, for example, you, Denise, Stephanie, Jordan, Melissa, Sheena, in my conversations, I think, like, you ask me questions, I tell you what I think. Sometimes you tell me what you think, and I might have some suggestions. And I think everybody organically, just by working together a lot more, we are all aligned. That doesn't mean you have to be like me or do what I think is right? You're going to have your own way of doing things, which is totally fine. But as long as you align on some of the bigger values, right, which we are already aligned on, and that's the reason we worked together for so many years. I think everything else after that is fine. You'll have your own style. Denise will have her own style. But the fundamentals are there.
Got it. And do you think these fundamentals can be taught, or you just have to find the person which have the same fundamentals as you have?
I don't think the fundamentals can be taught, but I think you find people who have some of those high-level things, right? They want to progress, they want to learn, they're open to improvement, they're humble. And then I think over time you align on the same values. Because if you try to teach someone something, they might have some other principles compared to what you have, so they don't have to be the same, I feel. But at least what we stand for as human beings should be same, right? And
at very high level.
Yeah, at a very high level. And then you'll have your own style of doing things.
When you're hiring, you're not asking, you say that you're not starting with the CV first.
Yeah.
You are seeing the person and then thinking what strengths they have and then creating a job around them. But sometimes there is a need, right? We need one person to manage operations. What if you hire one person and they say they don't like operations and they want to do sales, but like we need that person there as well. So how do you like manage what people want versus what the company wants?
Yeah, so I think, I don't look at resumes when I'm shortlisting candidates. It's those questions that we ask, and the answers is what makes me decide if I want to talk to someone or not. That combined with, how much hustle they have, how much they're trying to reach out, some of those things. And then, of course, when I talk to them, it's more about their just overall what makes them tick as a person, what they've done in life, that sort of stuff, which at least tells me that, this is their mindset. And then I ask them hypothetical, if you wanted to achieve this, how would you go about achieving this? if it's someone who's applying for a very specialized role in the CPG team, like let's say our goal is to onboard emerging brands in this particular category, how would you go about it? Right? So I would understand how they can think. Some of those things. Same thing with operations, right? So I think it's good if they have experience in that field, but even if they don't, but if they know how to think about that problem or that situation, they are in the running for that position. And then I think your second question was, yeah, we need someone for ops, but that person wants to do something else. How do we manage that balance, right? And I think it's simple. I think first thing is people have to add value before moving on. That I think is an implicit rule in most things we do. After that, if they've added value, they've earned the right to do something else. If they want to do something else, that's totally okay. Just because we need someone somewhere doesn't mean that person has to do that all his or her life. But then it's that person's job to go hire someone, train them, initially transition like some of the tasks to this new person, and then slowly flow out, right? But I would say that would be the approach. But they got to earn their place first, they got to add value, and then they can go do something else. So I'll ask you some questions and you can ask me some, right? So traditionally, right, when you think about corporate America, 9 to 5, this is your office, and that's the culture. What's our way?
I think our way is individualistic way, where anyone can work from anywhere, whenever they want. So I think the difference is, how do you measure output? Do you measure it based on the number of hours worked, or do you measure it based on what they have done? And just because the company culture is that as long as they're getting the work done, we don't care if they worked 1 hour a day or 6, or like they worked in the morning or at night, they worked from their office or somewhere in the beach. Just because the culture is output based, it takes away and it makes all these things obsolete.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Doesn't matter, right? It's all about how much value you're adding to the business.
Yes.
Nothing else matters. Typically, when people are interviewing, I think all the interviews I did when I was back in finance, I think people would talk about this person going to stay here for the long term or short term or whatever, and that's always a part of a discussion. And I think my personal view has been, who cares about how long someone's going to be at SnackMagic? We would love for someone to be here for a very long time, but that shouldn't be a metric that we should use to hire or not hire people. It's totally okay for someone to be here for just 6 months. As long as they're adding more value in 6 months than whatever amount we've invested in terms of time and energy, I feel it's totally okay to do it that way, right? What are your thoughts on that?
I 100% agree. Again, I think this concept and this mindset in these big corporations is coming from the past, where training a new employee would take a lot of time, right? Like you won't get a doctor or like get an engineer and like train them the entire process for like 1 year and then they leave the next day. It makes sense, but I think nowadays most of the jobs you can train people or make them understand what it is in 1 week. So there's no point thinking how long they will stay or how much money or energy we are investing in.
Yeah, and also on that note, many jobs, but I think it's also about the company, right? You create this concept where there should be no training required for any job, for that matter, right? You have to know some basics, but there's no reason why someone cannot go full swing in 2 weeks. And that just makes overall everything so much more flexible and less dependent on any one individual.
Yes. And I think also this mindset that people should, their entire aim should be their work is wrong. Like ideally people have their own lives. The company has its own direction, and there will be times when both will meet paths. And as long as they can work on the same path together where both are being fulfilled and like both are happy, it's fine. And like as long as soon as the paths deviate, it's okay to let it go. There's no hard feelings, but
yeah, exactly. And on that same note, take it a step further, right? I think interviewing for jobs when you have a job is looked down upon, right? And people are scared about interviewing somewhere else when they already have a job and all that. And someone was asking me this question the other day, and I said, What's wrong with that? You should actually, everybody should go do interviews once a year to see what's out there. Maybe if there's something you like more or you're going to learn more there, it's fair game. There's nothing wrong with interviewing at other places when you have a job. So I think that also did not make sense to me. But what are your thoughts on that?
I actually remembered something. When I started in operations, this guy Kevin, who worked in operations, and he's really shy. He doesn't want to talk to customers. And I remember you were pushing him to do customer service. And it's all great because like we want people to progress. But this one line you mentioned him was that if you keep doing what you're doing right now, your future prospects of going to other companies, you won't be valued that highly than if you learn multiple skills and then go somewhere else where then your future is secure. And I was new at that time, and I was thinking, what is this guy saying? Like, why is he telling his own employees how they can benefit by going to other companies? But it all makes sense. Like, we let people grow, and then when they're leaving, they're leaving.
Yeah, and luckily most people have stayed here forever, right? Like hardly anybody's left. But I feel even if people were to leave, it's cool. I think that's life, right? People should max their life out. They should feel emotionally that they have to be here, right? It's simple. Yeah.
This one line you mention a lot is growth solves all problems. How do you think that relates with the culture we have?
Yeah, I mean, I think growth makes life very easy, right? Because everybody is excited about what's happening, and all the other people on the outside they're talking to want to do business with us, right? So that makes the job very easy, whether it's customers, whether it's brands, whether it's on the operation side, people are vendors. Growth solves all those problems, right? But at the same time, I think if you've built a culture on good fundamentals, you could go through a very rough patch and still come out on the other side very strong. And we had that, right? Stadium was going so strong, and then overnight, I think our business went to zero. And then because of the culture we had, I mean, we were able to whip something up, launch it very quickly, and there was never ever a discussion about should we do it, should we not do it. We had to do something. Yeah. So I think it was just a question of what would we do.
Yes, and I remember when you pitched SnackMagic to the tech team, they were willing to work day and night, and we didn't even expect that it would be ready so fast. Yeah. But it's that they were passionate about it. I think that level of output you cannot bring in by pushing someone. It has to come from within. You cannot, as you mentioned, free lunches or any external motivation cannot bring that level of output.
Yeah, I remember that. The tech team in India, they are working day and night so that we could launch this so quickly. And in 3 weeks, we launched from nothing to product, yeah. So I think people think a lot about it. I remember in my days in corporate America, like, what would my boss think, right? That's the frame everybody has. They're always worrying about what would your boss think. And people, sometimes initially with me also, people think like that. And I feel like that shouldn't matter. Like what your boss thinks should not matter. It should matter what you think. You have to hold yourself accountable to whatever standard you want. And what your boss feels is a resultant of that. Who cares, right? So I think that's also one thing. And if you are worrying about what your boss thinks, you're constantly going to be worrying, which is not healthy for you or for anybody for that matter. And managing expectations is never something that you can achieve, because someone's expectations, you don't know what they are, and they often keep changing. So I think, isn't it better just to manage your own expectations, which you have full control over, and hold yourself accountable to that, right? So that's one concept that I also tell everybody a lot. What do you think about that?
I actually learned that from you, because in the beginning you mentioned it to me that don't overthink what I'm thinking. If I am thinking something, I will let you know. But if I'm not saying anything, then it means everything is good. And I tell that to everyone I work with, that don't ever think what I'm thinking. Yeah. I will message you, I will tell you if I'm thinking something, but don't waste your time stressing over it. And that like subtle stress, it kills you, because it like keeps on adding.
Exactly. People can't sleep well at night because they're thinking about what I'm thinking. Yeah. And I tell them, I'll tell you straight up whatever is on my mind, and that's all there is to it. And then now go sleep at night. You don't have to worry about what I'm thinking.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's how we think about our culture, our work, SnackMagic. And we're not saying this is how everybody should do it. Who are we to say that? But these are some of the things that we've learned that work for us. But I think if we let people be, I think from employees they become founders or co-founders, and you see a very different side in them. And we'll keep double downing on some of these things. I think if there are lessons here that anybody wants to take, we'd love to, see them being applied somewhere else. And if you have thoughts, ideas, suggestions, feel free to reach out to us.